and thank you all for joining us for another episode of Just Off College Avenue. Today we are going to talk to Tabitha Greiger about Squiggly Careers and being flexible in your career. So I'm going to toss it over to her so she can give a brief introduction about herself.
Hi, my name is Tabitha. I am a graduate of the University of Virginia's College. It was. I'm not going to start off very well here, already tongue-tied. But I was the first class out in 2000 under the new name. And I grew up in Appalachia, Virginia, and I've lived in Wise County most of my life. And most recently, my husband and I started a company called Appalachian Rising Ventures, and we're working on some downtown revitalization in my hometown of Appalachia, Virginia.
So Tabitha, as you guys can already tell, is a mover and a shaker because she's making some changes in our region, and we love that. And Tabitha, you have done a lot of different types of work, whether it's from state government, insurance, child advocacy, and even as an entrepreneur, as you have just mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey so that way the listeners understand why you are a perfect candidate to talk about nonlinear or squiggly careers?
So I think that one of the things that just kind of ended up happening for me, I didn't really plan it this way, was that a lot of my jobs turned into other jobs just based upon how my interests grew. And I think that a lot of young people today kind of get a lot of pushback for not being satisfied with positions, but I completely understand when you feel like you don't have an opportunity to improve or to grow in a position, or you're not being offered opportunities to do that. And I was kind of always that way. And so I was always looking for ways to improve myself, to learn new things, to learn new skills. And that's kind of, I think, how some of my career transitions happened. And some of them made sense, and some of them were totally different changes of approach. But I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about people that are coming out of college today is their motivations are very different than people from my generation were expected to have. And their motivations usually center around a lot of qualities that I actually find kind of admirable, like work-life balance and the benefits and just feeling a sense of accomplishment. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So I'm pretty quick to defend younger people when they're getting criticized by people my generation and older, because I think I kind of get the mindset.
Yeah. So what you're kind of talking about is leading into like corporate ladder is not necessarily as important to, first of all, this generation, and then also not really the way that jobs are working, because as you spoke about, sometimes you were taking on jobs and roles that weren't initially yours, and it kind of evolved in that way. So trying to climb a career ladder is not necessarily the best strategy or even a strategy anymore. That alongside like the rapid changes in technology and longer life expectancy for people is definitely changing the number of jobs that are expected to be held in a lifetime. They're increasing. Could you talk a little bit more about that, the change in that expectation?
Yeah, and I think, the other thing that is unfortunate is we're seeing now as well that people are having to work longer into an age that typically people would have retired. And I think that just given a lot of changes that happened during the pandemic, especially, I think the job market just kind of shifted because you have a lot of, you have a lot of jobs now that can be flexible as far as like in office or working from home, and those things existed in some respect before, but I feel like they were a lot less. Even though before the pandemic I actually had some jobs that allowed me to have a flexible schedule so that I could maintain my work-life balance. When I worked some of my positions, I worked in Richmond, and I pretty much could drive it straight. I don't recommend it, but it was about 5.5 hours from my house to the office. And I worked part of my week in Richmond, and then part of my week I was allowed to telecommute. And at the time, that was kind of unheard of, and it wasn't that long ago. We're talking like 2012 to 2015. I did this particular position, and my first boss. Well, I should say first, I guess, that the company that I worked for, they were owned by a company based in Britain. And I found at that time that they treated employees a lot better than a lot of American corporations did, because they were already kind of getting this picture of that if you take care of your employees, you're going to have happier employees, you're going to have them showing up for work, they're not going to be, just absolutely maxed out trying to work sick, etc. But I had a really good boss, and he was male. I'm going to say that because this was the one thing that kind of shocked me at the time. He was male, and when I went and interviewed for the position, they were just like, oh, you would be perfect for this, because it was a compliance and legal position. I had backgrounds in both of those. At the time, I didn't have insurance, but this was an insurance position, which is kind of how I got into insurance. And so basically, I was allowed to do this very flexible schedule that really just helped me manage my work-life balance, helped me take care of my kids. I had excellent benefits. I was able to take care of myself, despite the fact that I was driving about 2,000 miles a month. And then I got a new boss, and it was a female boss, and she was in her late 40s at the time. But immediately she came in and said, well, I don't like this, that you're not here in the office working. And I was really kind of confused by that, because I said, all of my job tasks, I'm meeting deadlines and I'm meeting state requests for things. If they don't get done, you'll know. And she actually made me back off my work-life schedule, or my flexible schedule that allowed me to manage all this. So instead of working a couple of days at home, she was making me come in for the 4 or 5 days of the work week. And it was almost like I had to earn my days that I could work from home. And it was very upsetting. And I did end up leaving that job soon after that, because I have some health issues. But, I think that one of the things that we have to realize now that's very different is, especially younger people, they're not motivated by paychecks. They're not motivated by the amount of money they're even making necessarily. There are other things that motivate them. And I think that that's showing a necessity for Squiggly Careers that didn't exist before. And it's in response to, a lot of the opportunities that were, unfortunately, the pandemic actually brought front and center. And so it's amazing in 10 years how fast, the work environment can change, and the opportunities for jobs and everything. So I think that before we were more afraid of companies changing. And now I think companies should be more afraid of not allowing their employees to grow and to have the things that they value the most.
I do remember in college, there weren't nearly as many remote opportunities or hybrid options when I was looking, both during and after graduating. So I do think that the pandemic really helped to highlight that, and I think it helped people realize that's something they would rather have if they can. So just expectations are definitely changing. And switching gears a little bit and reflecting on your days in state government, is there any knowledge that was helpful to you, or is helpful to you now that you're an entrepreneur and a consultant? Like, what kinds of transferable skills have you seen throughout your various transitions with that?
I did some varied, jobs as far as working as a state employee. And I think the one thing that is, for me, I think was the most eye-opening tidbit that I walked away with is that state government moves really slow. And I don't like moving really slow. So it was very difficult for me to manage my expectations because I'm results-oriented. And so that was kind of surprising to me, but I think that that's a true sign of somebody that maybe has a lot of just desire to change things and do things, not only for themselves but for people, as if they can stand work in state government or not. But I had done some work I'd worked for the prison system and done some administrative positions. I worked for the governor's office in the Secretary of the Commonwealth's office, processing documents that were used overseas, and then I also worked as a policy analyst for the Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. And I think that all of those positions really gave me a unique understanding of how government worked, and also how sometimes it didn't work. And also, a lot of times people, they want to change or affect the process, but they don't understand the process. And so I think as just a grassroots person who participates in a lot of community things, I think sometimes that unique perspective of why certain things are being done the way that they are, and how, if people want to affect the process, how they could do so is one of the things that I really feel like I gained from that. And I actually really did like working for the governor at the time. That was a good time, but as you know, with a lot of those positions, you're appointed, and so when the governor's gone, you're gone too. So that was one of my forced career changes.
Yes. I mean, we were talking about how you had mentioned the Virginia Department of Mines, Minerals, and Energy, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have done complete industry changes from that into like the insurance industry. Has there been driving forces for that, other than of course being appointed and then that role ending?
Yeah, so most recently I will say I had a farmers insurance agency. I was an agent for them for 8 years. I won a lot of sales awards, and one of the things that really changed with that company was also during the pandemic. And we went from an agency that really valued agents and what we offered to customers to really being pushed to focus on things that just weren't really as important to me if I was going to be in a sales position. So a lot of those changes, and then they on top of giving us more things to struggle with, they decided to cut our commissions. So then we were making less money off of products that were harder to sell because rates were increasing because of the pandemic. And I finally was just like, I came to this realization after 8 years, like, I dread coming into work every day. And it's not because of my customers. It's not because of my job. It is because of all these things I'm grappling with that I don't have control over. And for me, it just became time to just let that go. So the amazing part, though, is that I feel like, when one door closes, one always opens. And during that time, my daughter had decided she wanted to open a business of her own. And so I went to help her get that business started. And that kind of solidified everything for me the day that I realized that I liked playing with, she's a dog groomer. So I realized that I, who did not consider myself an animal person, loved going and playing with dogs every day and talking to people about their dogs than insurance. So I kind of transitioned out of insurance just almost for the same reason a lot of people leave jobs now, just a dissatisfaction with the way the company changed, and my conscious decision that that's not how I wanted to spend my days, that I had enough stress in life and other things to worry about than to not enjoy my job every day. So, and then from there, I've transitioned into helping another one of my children who just graduated from UT, and he runs a production company. So I've been helping him some with that. And then the funny thing is, in the middle of this, we bought these buildings, which was a total accident. Somebody told my husband and I at dinner one night, they said, well, we didn't know that you were into historic preservation. And I said, well, we didn't either till we left the auction. So when we did that, the funny thing was Justin was able to help us like start marketing kind of what we were trying to do, because one of the things that I think is important about what we're doing now is to show that this doesn't happen like HGTV, where you flip a house in 30 minutes to an hour. That it's a slow process. It's not anything that my husband and I have done before. So I think one of the most important things that I've gained because of my career changes. I've learned to not be afraid of not knowing what the answer is. And I've learned to not be afraid of not doing it right the first time, making mistakes. And I've learned to, pick out the wins and focus on those and do what you can about things. But, it's a process. And that's kind of how I think we've kind of ended up where we are now, because I've got this I think this unique ability now to not be afraid to do hard things. And so then I think in true ADHD fashion, I am not just doing one hard thing. We had to buy a whole bunch of buildings. So we plan to be doing this probably for the next 10 to 20 years. And people ask us a lot of times about the buildings and how they're coming along. And I always remind them that it didn't take a year for them to fall apart. It's going to take us longer than a year to get them back into operation. And we don't plan to own the buildings in perpetuity. We hope that as we do the hard work of restoring them and getting them back into use, that we can help mentor other young entrepreneurs to come in and eventually buy those buildings because they have successful businesses in them.
So it sounds like some of these transitions have just been so natural. They just kind of picked up and happened, and I love to hear that, because it's hard when, for instance, the one you mentioned with insurance, it's hard to realize you don't like what you're doing anymore and how you're going to adjust. But I like that you've had some really good, easy transitions. And also, when you don't know, you don't know. I love that too.
And, I think... not that I'm a perfect mom or anything, but I think that's one of the things that's allowed me to not freak out with my own children as they've taken different paths. So in the middle of the pandemic, I had one that literally decided to walk away from his full ride because he was not happy with taking classes online. And we told him, we were just like, there's no amount of money that's worth being miserable for. And if you do not enjoy what you're doing, go do something else for a while. And he did. And total degree change by the time he came back to school. So, but I think because of how my life has went, I really understand that like finding yourself isn't just following the perfect path of high school, college, get a job, keep a job. Sometimes it's all these things in between that really build your character and put you on the right path. Like that's what's so important, I think, to remember is that, like you said, a lot of these things just kind of happened. And at the time, I could freak out. I don't like change. I will say that. I don't like change. So it's made my life a lot easier when things seemed fluid and seemed to just parlay into new opportunities. But I think you always you have to be open to new opportunities too. If you've got your mindset that, I want to do this for the rest of my life, and then it doesn't happen that way, that is definitely a lot more stressful. And I've had that with my kids a little bit too as they've come out of college. It's been very hard. I had one that came out of college right into the pandemic and couldn't do what he wanted to do right away. And now he's doing something totally different and he's absolutely happy with it. And then, just even now the job market is very tight in some ways. I think a lot of people think everybody's hiring. And I think everybody has hiring signs up, but I don't think everybody's hiring.
Yeah. Some are just fielding.
Yeah. So it's very difficult for kids to come out of school right now because they feel like they should come out of school and get straight into something that they want to do. And that only happens some of the times. Maybe if you chose healthcare or something like that that's really in demand. But if you have a niche degree or a niche interest, that's going to be a little bit more of a struggle. And I think that the biggest thing you have to remember during those times is that you're not wasting your time. You're learning new things. And like I tell my kids all the time, even if you're just learning how to deal with people, that's the biggest skill you could have in life, because you're going to probably have to deal with people the rest of your life. So take a customer service job, do a waitressing job. You're not wasting your time. You're learning how to work with people. And, and you just keep looking for, those opportunities, and then it just flows at some point. So
you are preaching to the choir. I am the queen of transferable skills, because it doesn't matter what job you have, you can always learn new skills, and you have knowledge that will benefit wherever you are or you plan to go. So yeah, hitting on that. And then also the growth mindset, like don't box yourself in. It's okay. I like how you're hitting on all of those things. So maybe for some of the listeners who are struggling with either this concept or, maybe they're actually living in it right now, do you have any suggestions on resources that you'd like to share with them that may make a non-linear career a little bit easier to navigate and help them stay versatile?
Well, I think that a lot of what you do in your spare time really even can predict if you're going to find your way or not, honestly. People really downplay a lot of times volunteer opportunities, but, a lot of things that I've done were not even things that I got paid for, but those skill sets that I gained from those opportunities were more valuable than anything I was getting paid for. For instance, for almost 15 years, I was the marketing coordinator and one of the assistant producers for the Trail Lonesome Pine, which, if you're local, is the state outdoor drama. It's located in Big Stone Gap, and my minor in college was theater. I have a business degree. Business and public administration was my degree at the time, and then I went and did an MBA, and then I was about halfway through law school and ran into some personal issues and financially could not continue. But and I always like to joke about that, like half of the law school education gets you about $150,000 in debt. And that's about it. Because you don't have a law degree technically. So at some point, even though I'm getting older, I do plan to go back and finish that. But, you just have to think sometimes outside of the box, I think, about the skill sets that are more transferable. And, again, people skills. But anything that improves your communication skills, is always valuable. Anytime you can demonstrate that you understand, and right now, for instance, if you can demonstrate that you understand online marketing and SEO analytics and all these things like that, those are skill sets that apply to so many jobs now, because, it's not just, it's not just paid jobs that look for those skill sets. Even there's sometimes volunteer organizations that also need those skill sets. So you can kind of build off of things even in your free time, and not that sitting around and Netflix binging is bad, but I think that as much time as we put into some of those things that are really just wasting our time, if you can just find one thing a day that helps you build your skill set, or helps you shape your mental attitude about things, I think that's the most important thing. Is just that every day you need to think, what's one thing that I can do to improve myself? Rather that's your mental attitude, your skill sets, something, for your resume, or not. And I think that that's the most important thing right now for especially kids coming out of college, because they think they've got the degree and that just turns into a job, but it doesn't. It's the other things that you have done. So for instance, when I was hiring, I would look for things that that showed me for let's say for the insurance agency, things that showed me that you had initiative. Because if you can't do it without me telling you you have to do it, you're never going to survive in sales. And I think that people don't understand that sometimes, what employers are looking for in what job seekers are putting on resumes. And so, for instance, my son, who has owned his own business now for 2 years, couldn't understand a couple of feedback things that he got from a job that he'd applied for. And one of the things that I pointed out to him is, well, you're thinking because you've owned your own business for 2 years, that's a good thing. But you're in a creative field. And so maybe they think that means that you think you know what needs to be done, and you're not going to be coachable because you already have all this experience, and you're going to think your way is the only way, and that's going to be your creative mindset. And so we just talked about ways to kind of soften that and make it transparent that he was looking for new skills, new opportunities to learn from other people. And, it was just not something that he had thought about. But because I've had this, experience as an employer before as well, I as soon as he told me what the questions, the feedback were, I said, oh, I think I know. I think I know what they're thinking. And that's really helped him kind of understand a little bit more how to market himself.
Yeah, staying curious, it sounds like, and then also relying on some of the people around you, because, you had great advice for your son, I believe, to be honest, because when you have people who have perspective around you, it changes how you move through life and transitions.
Yeah, and, resumes and things now, too. I've been looking at LinkedIn, how you can do these, generated, and then there's these websites that you can go and put things in, and they AI generate resumes. And while that's great, to help you maybe come up with a format or whatever, nothing is more important than having people, and maybe even people in the industry that you're looking to work in, look at that resume and give you their feedback. Because what you think or what the computer thinks is a good way to phrase something or do something doesn't mean that's what a human's going to read and say, oh, yeah, they're wonderful because they've got this. They might see a problem, or the way something's worded might make them, think that you're not the best candidate. So I think that's one thing that I'm really afraid, a lot of younger people have gotten out of the habit of is that feedback of, letting people read their resume and tell them maybe what they should do a little different on the resume. So once you've got that experience, you still have to, you still have to say it in a way that's attractive to people. And you could have the greatest resume in the world, and if it's, not worded the right way, the right person may not pick up on it. So
that's very true. We often tell students to make targeted resumes for each application because sometimes you have the skill, but the way you need to list it for a particular employer is different, especially if it's a larger company or a smaller company. Yeah,
definitely.
The verbiage, that they're looking for is different.
We'll use wordage. I like that word.
Well, thank you. And so as you have navigated your career, do you believe that your nonlinear or your squiggly career has brought you more satisfaction than if you had stayed at one particular place and actually climbed the ladder? And if so, what do you think people should consider in their motives for that?
Yeah, I think for me in particular, I think that constantly being able to learn and grow and change the things that I was doing at any job when I would transfer into something else, for me, that was very attractive. Now, it's not for everybody, and there are still some careers that you could go into and kind of stay more linear. You're probably still going to see changes. Even teachers, through the pandemic saw great changes in the things that they were expected to do. But there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a nurse or a teacher or something and making a career out of that. And I think that's the one thing that we should highlight here is that there's nothing wrong with a linear career. But for the majority of us, I think the fact that the world changes so often too, you could have a dream job and a year later in the middle of a pandemic decide, this company's not for me anymore. And so it's worked well for me. And I think that that's one thing that, we should always be open to the fact that things change, even just your family life. I've had jobs before that, when something would change with my kids, it would just change the way I thought about my schedule or my demands or anything like that. So, even if you feel like you settle into something you really like, just be open to the fact that 5 years from now, that job might not be for you anymore. So in the meantime, keep growing and building and diversifying your knowledge and your skills and all of that stuff, because you never know when you're going to need to, put that down because you've decided you want a new job or a new career path.
Absolutely. Sometimes the pivot finds you. You don't find it, it creeps up on you. Well, I do like to round out every episode with asking our guest what is something that has been keeping them curious lately, whether it's books or podcasts, related or non-related to the topic that we speak about.
So, probably, I don't have a lot of free time.
You do a lot.
I have 6 children. 4 of them are older. They're adults. One of them's the oldest one. He's 28, and he just bought his own car by himself last year. And he was like, "Look, Mom, I'm adulting," and I kind of had to laugh at that. My husband is a retired U.S. Marine, and when we got married, our goal was to get all the kids raised. And when Shelby went to college, we were actually going to move to the Virgin Islands. He likes to snorkel, so we were going to move to the Virgin Islands, and then in 2019 we accidentally started over again, and then in 2020 we had a second surprise baby. So I've got a 6-year-old and a 6-year-old and 5-year-old, because one just turned 5. But my 5-year-old is extremely high-functioning autistic. And one of the things that I guess I do in my spare time a lot is just kind of read about just the research and trying to understand how best to interact with him, because it's very different, just the way he focuses on things, but more so also just learning about how to advocate for people who are neurodivergent or on the spectrum or any of these things, because I think that that's a really important, just adjustment our society needs to make, is understanding that not everybody is the same, not everybody learns the same, and making sure that, because he's extremely intelligent. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of my comments lately. Like the other day, he was obsessed with Windows 11 and was telling me the last time the logo changed was 2021, and he was correct. I went and looked it up and everything, but he's extremely intelligent, but we still have struggles. And I also understand that as much as our struggles at the times are difficult, they are not as bad as other parents maybe that have different struggles, and just trying to learn how to advocate for that and to make sure that that kids in general that are participating in sports and things that we do as well, that people are understanding, not just of my son, but just kids with these challenges, and they're only challenges because society kind of wants everything to go a certain way, and it doesn't work that way for some of these people. So, I've joined one of the parent groups at the school, and one of the things that, I brought up the other day that nobody had ever really thought about was these activities nights that they have, and about making a room for kids to go to if they were overstimulated, because that happens when there's large crowds or noise and things like that. So, another one of those things, I guess, where I can't even relax. I'm always doing something. So, but yeah, just learning more about, those types of challenges for people and how, we can change things to make not only Silas's world a little bit better, but maybe, other children who are not being advocated for the same way.
I like that because there's a ton of research and knowledge that you can gain both on people with autism and autism spectrum, but also with various disabilities and how we can meet their needs and make them feel more like they're a part of society, because they are, and not like they're excluded and stuff. So like for instance, on the sidewalks, the dots on the yellow things when you're crossing sidewalks, that's Braille for your feet for blind people. So like to let them know. So
they're coming to an intersection.
Exactly. So there are things in our world that are intended to help people who have disabilities, even if you don't know it. So I agree with Tabitha. Look into some things, find an article, and be like, what do I use every day maybe that was initially geared because of a disability.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing the things you don't think of sometimes until you have to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There are things in my life that have definitely been like that. You take it for granted until you're with somebody and you're like, oh man, this is not good. This is very bad.
Yeah.
Oh. But if there's anybody who's listening and they want to connect with you, what are the best ways that they can do that?
So our business, Appalachian Rising Ventures, we're on social media, and we have a website that's really more of a link tree right now, kind of to a lot of the things that we're doing, and that's probably the most public way to keep up kind of with what we're doing. I do have a LinkedIn and some other things, but I don't let people on my personal social media. You're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn, though, or send messages. But, our business page is really the best way to reach out to me.
That's awesome. Well, I'll make sure that all of those ways to connect with Tabitha are in the description below. Thank you all again for tuning in to this episode of Just College Avenue, and we will see you later. Bye.